Hello, my name is Max. I desperately need a haircut, and today we're talking about flappers, specifically the fashion that was part of this infamous subculture and the mentality that surrounded being a flapper in the 1920s. All the sourcing will be in the description, and I hope you enjoy. First things first, let's define flapper fashion. And what I'm going to say right off the bat is it is not this. When you think of flapper fashion, a lot of people think of an almost bodycon dress that reaches mid-thigh if we're being generous, long cigarettes, lots of drippy beads, and fringe. All of the fringe. But the flapper fashion that is described as flapper fashion today is not what it actually was in the 1920s. And even though the fashion that I'm about to describe to you that was actually flapper fashion could be considered very modest by today's standards, at the time it was very scandalous. Just as a quick thing before we continue, there's this thought process that everyone dressed like this back then, but even if you find a dress online that seems semi-accurate, a lot of the time it's an evening dress because those were still very much popular at the time, like different dresses for different times of day. And also, this was a subculture. This was the equivalent of seeing someone dress emo nowadays. It was definitely popular at the time, but it wasn't absolutely everyone. And I just wanted to say that real fast. To understand the rebellion that was associated with this fashion at the time, we need to actually look at previous generations. We just got out of World War I, which we could blame for the loss of use of petticoats in the past 20 years. But even then, skirts were still very structured and corsets were still very much in use up until the late 1910s. In the 1920s, though, a typical flapper chose dresses that were of a straight style, sleeveless, and often low cut, as well as short, about knee length, which was rather scandalous at the time. To accommodate the fact that dresses had a much lower cut and that natural figures are more in, corsets changed dramatically. They didn't go away completely, though. There's a myth that around the 1920s, this basically made corsets go away completely, which wasn't true. Corsets changed just as much as any other piece of fashion throughout the ages, and they just had less boning because they needed less structure than previous generations. Corsets helped support the new body type that was idealized being natural, even though for most women, it wasn't natural, just like any other beauty standard. The new body type that everyone wanted was skinny and lanky and often described as boyish. This actually came back into fashion in the 1970s with the model Dame Leslie Lawson, or Twiggy. She had that basically exact body type, and so for that reason, this kind of silhouette came back for a short period in the early 70s. The dresses in the 20s also did not have nearly as much fringe or any at all as we think. Instead, they had things like beading, pleats, or embroidery. And actually, the entire misconception around this fringe can come from the 1950s Hollywood. Costume designers in those Hollywood studios obviously knew what 20s fashion looked like and could easily make a very accurate period piece for the 1920s with costuming, but accurate period costumes would have seemed old-fashioned to 1950s viewers who didn't have the ability to watch old movies the way we do now. Flappers really just wanted social change and to be able to live life to the fullest. Casual dating was being normalized, women viewed marriage as an equal partnership. They talked about sex and drinking and smoking casually. And all of this now is viewed as kind of second nature. Everyone talks about those things, everyone views things that way, but back then, older women were looking at these younger women in horror because they had been raised that all of those things could not be talked about like that. I hope this was interesting and helped people understand a bit more about what the flapper movement was. I think this is such an interesting part of fashion history and just history in general, but people get it wrong a lot of the time, which is pretty sad. Once again, all of the sourcing will be in the description if you want to check that out. Okay, bye.